Rob and Michelle Reiner, Rob and Michelle Weiner, Rob and Michelle Reiner were warned about their son weeks before their murders. Nick Reiner is facing life in prison without parole or the death penalty for the murder of his parents, Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner. In the months since their December 14th, 2025 murders, details on their son's mental health have emerged, including a schizophrenia diagnosis and recent medication change. The medical staff warned Rob and Michelle not to allow Nick to stay at their home due to the meds being switched, a source told US Weekly on Wednesday, March 4th. It could make him exhibit more erratic behavior. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Joe the Lawyer. I'm your host, Joe Palmetto, a practicing criminal defense attorney in Pittsburgh, PA, with over 10 years of experience. If you want to hear the best commentary on the biggest criminal cases in the country and also get legal tips and legal information, this is your spot, Joe the Lawyer, Joe Palmetto. Please like, comment, and subscribe on my channel. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Feel free to share also. I can't talk today. I'm trying to grow the channel. Thank you very much. So this is a bit of stunning news that just came out that I'm just seeing today, and we're gonna dig a little deeper into this article. Nick, 32 years old, reportedly got into an altercation with his parents the night before the murders at a holiday party hosted by Conan O'Brien. The couple was found deceased in their home by their daughter, Romy Reiner, the following afternoon. In January, the accused murderer's attorney, Alan Jackson, walked away from the case, claiming he completely and utterly committed to Nick's best interest. Public defender Kimberly Green ultimately took over Reiner's defense. The defense will argue that Nick's mental illness is what drove him to commit these acts, former LA District Attorney R.J. Dreiling told Us Weekly. The prosecutor will argue that even though he was mentally ill, he knew exactly what he was doing. Nick pled not guilty during his February 23rd hearing. He's being held at Twin Towers Correctional Facility in Los Angeles and is due back in court on April 29th. But the big news here is that the Reiners, Rob and Michelle, were told to not allow him to stay at the house whenever he was switching medications. And let's take a little deeper look here real quick. Let's find out where it talks about this in this article, because a lot of these articles just say the obvious over and over again. The second source sheds new light on what was happening in the weeks leading up to the murders, revealing that Rob and Michelle were trying to help Nick figure out his meds because they weren't working anymore. The medical staff warned Rob and Michelle not to allow Nick to stay at their home due to the meds being switched, and said that it could make him exhibit even more erratic behavior. In a January profile, the Washington Post reported that as much as he resisted his parents' interventions, he'd become accustomed to the trappings of his privileged upbringing. Well, apparently not that accustomed, considering what he did. Let's pause for a second, everybody. I'm drinking some iced tea. Have a sip with me. So, what would this mean for the case? Let's think about it a little bit. Now, I've talked about this multiple times and how, Alan Jackson has alluded to as much, but it appears as though Nick's only real defense here is a insanity defense, and he also will have available to him the defense of temporary insanity. I don't know if it'll stay on that picture, but that's the one I want. And the insanity defense, that both of them say the same thing. They say at the time when he committed the acts or committed the murders that Nick was insane. But the temporary insanity is actually a better defense, because temporary insanity would say that he was only insane during the period of time when he committed the acts. Therefore, he could get a straight not guilty and walk away. And I'm telling you that there is case law on this. One of the textbook situations for temporary insanity is it's generally when somebody is off their meds, not when they switched meds. But you have somebody who is schizophrenic and they're on medication and they go off the medication. And the period of time that they are off the medication, they can be deemed temporarily insane, and then they're put back on the medication, and then they're okay again. So then the court can say that the person is not guilty and also wouldn't have to put them into a mental hospital because now they're quote unquote under control, because whenever they're on their meds, they don't have insanity. And Nick is going to have that defense here. If I was his defense lawyer, I think we would probably go for both a temporary insanity and an insanity argument and let the jury decide what they think. I mean, if he were to pull off a temporary insanity, that would be just an unbelievable, tremendous result from his defense team, okay, from the defense perspective. I'm not saying that's the best result, necessarily for society, okay? But it would be stunning. It would be a stunning result. The difference here is that Nick wasn't off his meds. He just went to different meds. But what it boils down to is almost like blaming the meds. But it's really a combination of his mental insanity and his meds. And the fact that the Reiners were warned, here's how I feel about that is it makes it all more tragic because you feel like maybe it could have been prevented, but it probably helps Nick's case because it shows like Nick's expert is going to dig into this. It shows that they knew, like the medical experts knew that something like this could happen and that it would be caused by the change in medication. And that may be enough. It may be enough to absolve Nick Reiner of responsibility at a trial. It may be enough. Either through the temporary insanity defense or the overall insanity defense. But if they were warned, it's going to make it look like Nick was insane, and henceforth, then it wasn't his fault. It wasn't the conscious premeditated desire of Nick Reiner to kill his parents. No. The medical experts knew that something like this could happen. And they warned the Reiners, and the Reiners still did nothing. They brought him to a party, and even after he exhibited, and I'm saying I'm playing the defense attorney part here. That's what I'm doing here. I'm not saying that I truly feel this way. I don't. But this argument was the Reiners were warned, and they still let him back in the house. Now, that's not to say that it's their fault. It's not their fault. But that is to say the medical experts knew that this change in medication could create the conditions for insanity. And that is exactly what happened. And it's very tragic. And perhaps on the night that it occurred, when they observed the erratic behavior, they still allowed Nick to come back to the house. So I think this news makes the whole thing more tragic. But how do I think it affects the case? I think it helps Nick's case. I do. And if I was his defense attorney, I would make sure that it's known that these medical experts warned. I mean, I don't have the time to do this, but it would be fascinating to dig into the medical literature around this, right? Switching up drugs, schizophrenic patient, etc., etc. There's probably leagues of documents that show that these people can be erratic and dangerous, and therefore would allow them to absolve him of responsibility at the trial. So it's very difficult to say what a jury's going to believe or think here. The jury's ultimately, different jury composition can give you a different result, but I still think Nick has a pretty good chance at winning this case. And when you say winning, I don't know about the temporary insanity. I think that's going to be hard, although possible. When I say winning, I think getting one of the insanities, either the insanity defense or temporary insanity. Sadly, Rob thought he could love the insanity, addictions, and evil out of Nick. Boogie Bear, you're right. You're right. Love cures all. Love is all you need. Obviously, you need more than love. Because just needing love didn't work for this family. A lot of these medications are insane. I'm sure they are, Zeph. I am sure they are. Not sure what meds he was on. I'm not either. But it will come out at the trial. And boy, will it be interesting to see. To find out what was in his system. Because these antipsychotic meds are powerful drugs. So, while it's a tragic situation, this is a bit of groundbreaking news, I think, that will truly impact the case. I will continue to give updates on this case and other cases like it, Luigi Mangione, etc. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. My name is Joe Palmetto, Joe the Lawyer. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Please, please, please leave comments, leave likes, everybody. Trying to grow the channel. I truly appreciate you dropping in and listening.